In 1969, a TV show dared to put real problems inside a classroom: race, identity, and the price of growing up. And America couldn't look away. But the people who brought those halls to life, their real stories are far more dramatic than anything the writers ever put on the page. Some became legends, some vanished without warning, and some never made it out. If you want to know what really happened to the cast of Room 222, stay right here. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. Lloyd Haynes. Pete Dixon. Lloyd Haynes was born on October 19, 1934, in South Bend, Indiana. When Room 222 premiered, he was 35 years old, stepping into the role of Pete Dixon, a high school history teacher with a quiet, unshakable moral core. His performance didn't just anchor the show, it became its conscience. Dixon was the kind of man audiences believed in completely, and that belief came entirely from Haynes himself. Behind that steady image, though, his personal life was anything but settled. After 11 years together, he divorced his first wife, Elizabeth, in 1970, and within that same year married Sandra Burge, only for that relationship to collapse by 1973. Two marriages ending back-to-back hinted at a man carrying far more pressure than the cameras ever revealed. He eventually found real stability when he married Carolyn Inglis in 1981, and together they welcomed a daughter named Jessica. For a moment, it seemed like the storm had finally passed. Then came the diagnosis: lung cancer. Even as his health deteriorated, he kept making the drive between Coronado and Hollywood to continue filming General Hospital, refusing to step away from the work that had defined him. That stubbornness, as admirable as it was, cost him everything. Lloyd Haynes passed away on December 31, 1986, at just 52 years old, in Coronado, California. He was buried at Eternal Hills Memorial Park in Oceanside. A private funeral, a lasting legacy. Denise Nicholas, Liz McIntyre. Denise Nicholas was born on July 12, 1944, in Detroit, Michigan. At 25, she took on the role of Liz McIntyre, the school's guidance counselor, composed, intelligent, and deeply human. She gave the show its emotional steadiness, balancing every tense scene with a presence that felt completely real. Her personal life unfolded in very different ways. Her first marriage, to playwright Gilbert Moses, ended in 1967. A relationship with singer Bill Withers became a marriage in 1973, but turned volatile almost from the start. A physical confrontation was reported in Arizona, and though she chose not to press charges, the emotional damage was already done. By 1974, it was over. She later married sportscaster Jim Hill in 1981, but even that relationship struggled under pressure, eventually ending in divorce by 1987. Then came the loss that changed everything. In 1980, her younger sister Michelle was murdered, her body discovered under circumstances that were never fully explained. No one was ever charged. Denise and her brother searched desperately for answers that simply never came. That grief pulled her away from Hollywood and toward something quieter and more private. As of 2026, Denise Nicholas is 82 years old, living away from the spotlight, focused on writing and reflection. She has carried decades of pain with a dignity that very few people ever truly see. Michael Constantine, Principal Seymour Kaufman. Michael Constantine was born on May 22, 1927, in Reading, Pennsylvania. At 42, he played Seymour Kaufman, the strict but deeply human high school principal who gave Room 222 its backbone. He was the authority figure the show needed, firm when the moment required it, but never without heart. His path to that role had been a long and exhausting one. For years, Constantine was overlooked and pushed into stereotypical supporting parts, forcing him to fight for recognition, long before Hollywood ever offered it. His first marriage lasted from 1953, until it quietly fell apart in 1972. Right at the exact moment his career was finally gaining real traction, as though success arrived only by taking something else away. He married again in 1974, but that relationship also ended in divorce by 1980. Those back-to-back losses left him with a quiet isolation that few ever noticed from the outside. Karen Valentine. Alice Johnson. Karen Valentine was born on May 25, 1947, in Sebastopol, California. At just 22 years old, she stepped into the role of Alice Johnson, the bright and optimistic student teacher who became one of the most immediately beloved characters in the entire series. Her charm felt completely natural. Audiences connected with her from the very first episode, and that connection never faded. At first, everything seemed to be going perfectly. In 1969, she married Mac McLaughlin, and her career appeared to be building toward something lasting. But as the years passed, a difficult reality set in. Hollywood kept casting Alice Johnson, not Karen Valentine. The very warmth that made her famous had become a ceiling. Opportunities narrowed, frustration grew, and by 1973, her marriage had also come apart, under the weight of it all. She found steadier ground when she married musician Gary Verna in 1977, and that relationship brought the kind of stability her earlier years had been missing. Rather than disappear when the television doors began closing, she adapted, turning to theater and live performance to stay connected to the work she loved. That shift was not just a career adjustment. It was a quiet act of reinvention. As of 2026, Karen Valentine is 79 years old, occasionally returning to the stage in public appearances, carrying the same resilience she brought to every role she ever played. David Joliffe. Bernie David Joliffe was born on November 19, 1952, in Los Angeles, California. At just 17 years old, he played Bernie, the student instantly recognized across America for his distinctive red afro, a look that made him one of the most visually memorable faces in the entire cast. His energy was infectious, and his presence gave the younger side of the show a personality all its own. What made his story unusual was how early it had all begun. David entered the entertainment industry at just 10 years old, making his professional debut in a national commercial for Kraft marshmallows. By the time Room 222 came along, he was already experienced. But like so many teen actors, the transition into adult roles proved far harder than anyone expected. As his on-screen work began slowing down, he made a smart and deliberate pivot, moving into commercial and voiceover work rather than chasing parts that weren't coming. That decision turned out to be a brilliant one. Over the following decades, David appeared in more than 100 television commercials and contributed to over 1,000 television episodes as an ADR looper and voiceover artist, shaping the sound of American television from behind the scenes. His influence didn't stop there. He became deeply involved in industry leadership, serving on both the SAG and AFTRA national boards, and eventually being elected as SAG National Vice President. As of 2026, David Joliffe is 74 years old and still active in voice acting and industry leadership. Proof that longevity in Hollywood is often less about staying in the spotlight and more about knowing when to step behind it. Eric Laneuville. Larry Eric Laneuville was born on July 14, 1952, in New Orleans, Louisiana. At 17, he played Larry, a troubled, emotionally complex student whose raw intensity gave Room 222 one of its sharpest and most honest edges. From the beginning, his career moved fast. He appeared alongside Charlton Heston in The Omega Man in 1971 and went on to take roles in Death Wish and A Force of One through the mid to late 1970s. But there was a ceiling that kept following him. The industry at the time offered young black actors a narrow range of parts, supporting roles, troubled youth, secondary characters. And no matter how well he performed, those boundaries rarely moved. Rather than accept that limitation as permanent, Eric made a bold and unexpected decision. In 1984, he stepped behind the camera and began building a career as a director. The transition was not smooth. He faced real skepticism, both about his age and about an African-American man taking the lead in spaces that had rarely made room for one. But he pushed through every wall. He went on to direct major episodes of L.A. Law, ER, Lost, The Mentalist, and NCIS Los Angeles. In 1992, he won an Emmy Award for directing I'll Fly Away, a turning point that confirmed everything he had worked toward. Even more remarkably, in 1988 he became the first African-American television director to film in Russia, breaking a barrier that extended far beyond any single production. As of 2026, Eric Laneuville is 73 years old and one of the most respected figures working behind the camera in American television. He took the limits others placed on him and built something far greater than those limits ever were.